I've noticed a small problem in the app, and which is that the class file name is slightly different from the one given in the SCSS file. So let me just change that quickly for you. So here is the class name, and the class name actually starts with student entry in it, and I think I've given it as plural. So let me select this entire occurrences. All you need to do is select the text and press Control D or Command D in case of Mac, and then it'll start selecting all the thing. Go to this, and then that's it. Now we're going to be also putting the buttons in the end of the form. Those buttons will be used basically to submit a form or to cancel a form. So in order to do that, we will have to write down a div. Inside that div, we're going to be giving two buttons, and one of which is type submit. The class name is button primary. Upon click, I want a certain action to be performed, and that action will be submitting a form to the backend. So I want to perform an action. The action is to close the model first. You can modify that further to have even more sophisticated logic, such as let's say if you wish to submit the form with some more entries, and if you want to modify that object and anything like that, you can certainly do that. And then disabled, I want this button to be disabled until the student detail form is invalid. So to write that, I'll have to write status invalid. I'll print up entire object here just for your reference to see how many other properties are there inside that where you can actually um, see and utilize. For now, we are just utilizing one property, which is status. But there are a number of properties and number of functions that you can make use of while writing the reactive form, and it is very easy and very quick for you to spin up basic logic and then start creating your basic forms. So submit. Let me just copy this, and I'm also going to be creating this for cancel button. Let me change the text over here. I don't want my but cancel button to be disabled ever. So let me just remove this condition right here. Upon click, I want my model to be closed. So I'll leave this click condition as is. I want my model to be closed. So there are two functions in Bootstrap model. The one is dismiss, the other is close. So as I have spoken briefly about it while we were writing the template, as I've briefly spoken about when we were writing the TS file, that in case of close, a close callback would be called in the form, and when you're writing or when you're dismissing it, a dismiss or a cancel result callback will be called. So in this case, I'm going to be dismissing it. I don't want it to be button primary, I want it to be button light. Let me put a class here, and the class name is please note that I have already created this SCSS file, and if you wish to follow along, I would request you to take a copy of the SCSS file and keep it in your local folder. I've briefly explained how to write BEM, how to write classes in BEM model, and how to write SCSS classes and how to utilize them. So in this tutorial, you can simply go to my GitHub repository, the link of it, which would be furnished in the description section below, and then just download that file as is and keep it inside the student record component.scss. You can just download it and keep it, and all your classes would be available that I've used here on this template, right? So the other is form row. Then since it is an input section, input button, I'm going to be making it as input buttons. Let me just save this quickly. Let's see if everything is fine. Yep. And let's just quickly go back to browser and see how our application behaves. Okay, so here is the browser, and let's go to the students tab here and then just click on add student. So here we can say at least the basic form is being rendered properly. However, there are some problem with the classes, and let's just try to fix this right away. Right, so let's go here. Yeah, 50 is fine. Let's just see how long would it go for. I think 680 looks okay. Let me just copy this, and also the buttons appear here towards the right, towards the left, right? So let me just put this in the center. So here's the container, and I need to display justify content as center. Yeah. So let me go to the VS Code and quickly fix these two classes. The first is the model content. This class needs to have 680 pixel. So here's the VS Code. Just open the class here. Since the model content is a Bootstrap class, let me just try to put this in the centralized place, and I'm going to be putting it here. Model content. Let me write min width 680 pixel, and we also need to fix the buttons, which should appear in the center. So here's the buttons. You open this, and here are the input buttons. Let me put justify content to center and save it. Let it just build for a second. Okay, so we notice that we need to make changes in two classes. So first is the model content. So I'll just put important here. By this, I'll ensure that class is important and being applied, and it's overridden by the local definition which I've defined, and then the input buttons I've already defined as justify content. So they must also appear justify content as center. So they must also appear in the center. Let us just go to the browser and have a look if things have worked out or not. So here's the browser. Yep. And we can see the application is working fair enough. Let me just refresh this. Being redirected to login, and I click on login button, and after clicking on the login button, it takes me to the landing page, dashboard page, and after that I can move to the students page. Let's click on the add students, and yep, here it is. So far we were able to create a form, and also we have created a reactive form and a template driven form. Now we are going to be putting the entries, but before that, let us just see what's wrong with our table. So here, if you see, the grid looks a little weird. However, in the application that we are trying to copy, look at the grid. It looks much better. So we'll just quickly fix this. And in order to fix this, we'll have to first of all see like what theme of grid we have downloaded from the AJ Grid documentation, AJ Grid CDN. So quickly go to the VS Code, and here in the VS Code, we're going to be going to the styles.scss, and here it is. We have downloaded theme.quartz. However, if you look at the original application that we are trying to build, here in that application, we have used Alpine theme, right? So let me just change this theme to Alpine. How do I do that? The HGrid community and the destination remains more or less same. It's just that the theme that I need to change, THEME hyphen ALPHALPINE Alpine .css. I'll just quickly save this. Let's see if we have done everything right. And also need to remove this because we're not going to be taking the quartz theme. Yep. Let's just now go to the browser and see if our application has taken that change into consideration and started rendering better. Looking great. So yep, so far let's refresh this app. It takes us to login page and let's log in. Students tab. Yep. So now we can see the application has become or looks a lot better. Right. So we have the add form. Yep. So there is this button which is missing, an icon on top of it. But then you can see uh, we are able to select different dates. We'll have to go back to VS Code. And here at the VS Code, we are first of all going to be making a change in calendar. So both these places are today, but then one has to be close. And then this has to be secondary. The primary button is in order to select the today's date and secondary button to close the model. And now I'm going to be going up in this form and also going to be changing the button classes such that the icon over there starts to appear. So we'll first of all have to make it button and then button outline secondary and then so with that change, I think we are pretty much done in terms of form and look and feel and everything. Now we are going to be adding functionality to various other different buttons which are available towards the end of the page. So let's just quickly go back to VS Code and see. Fine. So here is the login button of ours. Upon login, it waits for about 3 seconds and then you land on the landing page. Here on the students tab, you have a nice AG grid available and it has all of these basic AG grid functions. And then now you have the add button, which is working. So here we have the calendar icon. You can, let's say, select anything and then against the selected birth date, country, origin, state, everything else is fine. It's all inputable. So now let's just go back to VS Code and start putting functionality for these three buttons: view student and clear selection. Clear selection is essentially to clear the selection on the grid. And right after this tutorial, we are going to be jumping into the RxJS and reactive programming of which is used very heavily in Angular and also talk about signals. But before that, let's just finish this remaining bit and then quickly go to the reactive programming part of this tutorial. So now let's go back to VS Code. On the VS Code, we are going to be putting the entry for these three buttons. So close everything over here. Let me open the students record component. Just split the screen into two equal parts such that we can look at both the files simultaneously. And now let's just push the functionality for it. So collab set. Here on this template, here on this TS code, we are going to be basically putting the functionality for these buttons. In order to put these functionality over here, okay, so for view students, now, okay, so the idea behind view students is that you would select any row given on the AG grid. And once you select it, it will the view student button would be enabled. And once this gets enabled, what it would do is essentially open up the same form that we have built right now, but in a view mode, right? So let's just bring this functionality in here. So we'll have to bind the click event first, and then here on the click event, let's just define a function, open view form, and then we are going to be sending students forms object here. And then let's just define this function here. And similarly, student form. So student form is going to be here. And let's just define this form group. And now the delete form essentially is going to be deleting the selected record. So again, it has a function common between all these remaining action buttons, which is the selected record would be deleted and a pop-up message would be shown. And in order to do that, we'll have to first of all bind the click event such that it does the action we desire. So on delete record, and similarly, you're going to be passing the student's form here. My bad. So let's just put this any for now. And now here we are going to be putting the, let's just copy this function again and then make it for on delete. On open. So on open. On delete record. Similarly, a click event in case of clear selection. This is essentially going to be clearing the selected record in the AJ grid. So how will we do that? Again, we need to bind the function clear selection, and we need not really pass any argument in it. So let's just copy this here. Find this function over here. Just save this. Now, as I said earlier, all of these buttons, precisely view, delete, and clear, needs to be disabled the moment if needs to be disabled in case if the records if the AG grid record is not selected. So in order to do that, we'll have to first of all put a disable functionality. How will we do that? Disable functionality is going to be same for all these three button type. The reason is that view, delete, and clear selection would only be taking place only when you have a record being selected in the AJ grid. So how do we do that? We'll have to put a disable condition here. How do we put a disable condition? We need to bind this property here. And then let's just define a property in our component, which is check if selected, right? And there's going to be a function. So let's just put this function everywhere in all the other two buttons. Just going to be simple copy paste. Come here, paste, and then now define this check if selected button below this. And the return type is going to be boolean. And how will we do that? So logistically read a little. So in AG grid, when AG grid API, the moment your grid is ready, it calls a function which is called on grid ready, and then you get the grid API type available here in the property which is defined to this component, which is grid API. And inside the grid API, you can actually make a selection if and then you can, using this grid API, you can do a lot of things such that and you can do a lot of operations on AG grid. So AG grid is by far one of the finest production ready grid available on the market today. How do we do this selection? It's simple. So how do we define this function check if selected? So we'll have to first of all read the grid API, and then grid API has a function which is get selected rows. And then if the length of the selected rows is greater than 0, which means there is some record selected, and that's when we would display these buttons. This will come out to be false, and then these buttons would be enabled. So now let's just quickly go to the VS Code and see if this function works correctly. There's a login page. Let's just log in quickly, and here on the students page, there it says the property is undefined, which is because we have not really put a question mark in it. The reason is that initially, when the template is loaded, property would not be available. So this would come as undefined, and that's the reason it failed. So let us just fix this quickly. Let it restart for a moment. And then we'll go to the VS Code to see if things are working correctly or not. So Chrome, here you click on the login button. You click on the login button, you go to the students. Here you see these buttons are not selectable. But then also, if you notice that we have not really defined our grid such that we can select any of the row over here. It's just to be this to make selectable, we'll have to provide a property to the AG grid definition. Now go back to VS Code, and here on the AG grid, we'll have to provide row selection single property. So this is a property using which you can actually select multiple or single rows on the AJ grid. So the property name is row selection. There you go. It takes a moment to refresh the page quickly here. It's getting restarted. Let it just restart. Meanwhile, we go back to Chrome and see how this works. I can see the application has restarted. Now click on the login button over here. And then go to the students tab. Yeah, now we can select these. Now if you notice, these delete student, view student, and clear selection have been enabled, although we have not really defined anything here, so nothing would happen, but then at least this functionality is working now. So let's quickly go back to VS Code and see and implement the functionality for view student, delete student, and clear selection. So here in the VS Code, I think we can now open this full form like this, right? And firstly, we are going to be implementing open view form. So in order to display this, we have to go to the open view form and define a constant, which is going to be available in this function using the grid API question mark, and then get selected rows. You get the selected rows in here, and then student detail form dot fetch value. So let's just put the selected row. The get selected rows essentially returns an array, and that array, since we have defined the selection to be single, so it would essentially return just one. It would essentially return just one record, but in an array. So to display that, we'll have to put an array 0th element over here like this. Right now, we are going to be making the form disabled. In order to make this form disabled, form group provide a function out of the box from the from group class, which is disable. And when you call this function, your form gets disabled and you would not be able to change anything. That's exactly what we want in the open view, isn't it? Now let's just open the model service dot open, and then here we are going to be providing the content. The content is essentially the student's form. So let's just put this here. And then the second argument is let's just define the ARIA label labeled by model we record. This is just for the accessibility purpose. For now, just I know accessibility may be, for some of you, it may be a new concept, but let's just focus on it right now, although this argument is not mandatory. So let's not create confusion. I'll just remove this and then just make this, and then this function essentially is a promise. This function returns has a property called results. This result property is a promisable function. So let's just put this and then do a then, define it like this. And then here you can actually pass two arguments. As I said earlier, while describing the bootstrap model, so these two arguments are close and dismiss. When you dismiss it, you need to provide a reason, and when you close it, you need to provide a result. So if you remember, here on the template, we have defined two functions. So those two functions were close and dismiss. So see, model.close and then model.dismiss. So these are essentially to call those two callbacks which are to be provided in the enable function of the model, which is result.then. And then here I'm going to be capturing the results, rather results singular. And then here I'm going to be capturing the reason. You can design a lot more sophisticated logic here in the result and reason and display and do an action accordingly. But then here we're just going to be learning it. So I'm not really making it too complicated. And then let's just save it like this. So let me just go ahead with this and let me save this in a property called close result. And then I'll define this property. The reason is, and the result is going to be dismissed. And then this is the string interpolation of ESX dot get this is reason, and then reason like this. So in order to define this, we'll have to provide backticks, not really the string. So here, get dismiss reason is basically a function, right? So we need to define this function such that it does the action required. So this function is going to be private to this class alone because we don't want it to be accessible elsewhere. So let's just define this private. Get dismiss reason. Let me just return a string here and capture a reason. Here, if we will determine if the reason was model dismiss reason. So if the reason is escape, we will return. Let's just copy this and put here in another else if. So in this block, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be capturing the reason. Model dismiss reason. If it was backdrop click, meaning backdrop click, then need to return a string which would say this is all available out of the box from correct the template be shown on the again. I'm gonna be putting the same thing over here. This just put this here. It has closed. Closed with reason, right? So here it's gonna be result. Essentially, I'm just trying to display how the model was closed, but not really important. So on delete, we have done this. Now you also need to remove the record from the selected run. So now we are going to be removing this particular record from the displayed record. So how will we do that? It's simple. We already have the results array available with us, which is in the form of API response. Copy this, come back to delete API response dot for each dot API form or this each, right? So it's gonna be having a method that will be returning a record, and we will have to so the record dot, let's just check the properties, which one we will compare it with. So let's just say the name, right? So down here, record dot name is equals to, if this equals to selected record dot name, let's just get in here, and then the new response will be, that's what we will save. Let me declare it here. New response, I'm making it for now. Let's just declare it with empty array. If it is found, we will, let's say if it is not found, right? So that's when we would do a push, new response dot push, and then the new record over here. Once this is done, we are going to be assigning the API response with the new record, and let's just declare it, create a different object from it. Is like this, new response, and also this entire thing would actually get inside a close reason here. The reason we have defined it inside over here is that well, that only when you click OK, that's when this record must take place, and the record should not be available in the view of AG grid after you click on delete record, right? So let's just quickly go back to Chrome and see how this works so far. So here's the login page. Click on it. You land on the landing page, and here's the students tab. Just click this. All becomes available. This is a view. Fair enough. Let's just select this. Delete. Okay, there's a spelling mistake here. Let's go back to VS Code and fix this. SELECTED, selected rows. And then go back to Chrome browser again. Page is getting refreshed. Login button again. You're able to log in. Click on this over here. Select anything, delete. Yeah. So for now, it opens up this one because we have not really sent a template. Just go back to VS Code and fix this. So here on the VS Code, now we are going to be defining a delete template. So just go back here. Delete template up until now. So what we really want on the delete template is just display an error, and just display a warning message, and then notify user that this profile will be deleted if you click on OK. So to do this, we'll first of all have to define a template. So let's just come here and define a template, that is, and then this template name is going to be the confirm delete model. Confirm delete model, and then this is going to be model. So copy this over here and put it in against this ng template, and let's just define div inside it. Inside div, we're going to be defining this as a model header. Model header, and this will have an h4. This h4 will have a class. Its class is going to be model title. ID will be model title again. Deletion, declare a button over here that's gonna be of type button. And then this button will have a class with the name btn. This is a bootstrap class, and now we're going to be defining click. We're going to be defining a handler for click event, and this is model.dismiss. Let's just say this is going to be basically having a cross button on top of a model. So let's send back as cross click as a reason. Make this yes capital. And to close this quote. Now we're going to be defining a model body. So another div. Inside this div, let's declare a class. This model body. Inside this model body, I'm going to be displaying paragraph tag. So this paragraph will have a strong text. A span, and inside that is span. Let's just declare this as a class 3. So we need to define the selected row. We need to define this property inside the component, this selected record, and then that's what which will be displayed over here. Selected record dot name, because that's what we are going to be comparing it with. And let's just close this. Sorry. And then declare it like this, profile question mark, and then display another warning. So another paragraph tag, and then they say right. And let's just define another class just to make it better. And then class is going to be a text danger. That'll appear in a danger text. That'll appear in a red color. And then this OPERATION cannot be done. Put a full stop here, and I think we're pretty much good. And then let's just define quickly two buttons to close the model. So it's gonna be a div, and then let's just declare a class as model footer. And then we need to repeat these two buttons. The first will be of will be having a class like btn outliner secondary, and then a button. Now the second one will have a class as button and button danger. And this will be have OK written on it. And then upon click, let's just find this function here. And then we are going to be closing this model. And then the reason for closing the order, the model would be OK, click. Right? Now we're pretty much there. And then now we will have to define it for cancel. And then this cancel button, let's just bind event, which will say model dot dismiss. And the reason for dismiss is, let's say, close button clicked. Right? So we also need to close this like this. I think we need to define correct everything. I think this looks okay now. And we have provided this here in the confirmation model, the same confirm delete model here. The same will be displayed to the user. Looks like some error. Yeah, we'll have to define the selected record as well in the component. So here, and then it just find that on the top of page, which is selected record. Let's make it any, and come down at the delete level. Delete. So get this dot selected record is record, and then image it. Now our app is compiling. We go back to browser, see if everything is fine. So here we have a login button. Click on login, the dashboard. Now you have a student. Click on it. We receive it. They click OK, and then you can see the record is being deleted. Click OK, it's gone. Right?